there's a lot of year one head coaches right now in college football. You got Luke Fickell, you got Matt Rhule, you got Coach Prime at Colorado, Hugh Freeze at Auburn, who's doing work on the recruiting trail himself. And it sort of got me thinking here, how long is it going to take these head coaches to get to competing for conference championships? And I want to make this clear too. Not all first-year jobs are created equal. What Billy Napier walked into last year at Florida was very, very different than what Brian Kelly walked into last year at LSU. And so I think we have to sort of assess these different jobs and these different coaching staffs in a different manner. But even with that being said, how long will it take for them to compete for some hardware? Let's start with Colorado. When I look at Colorado, you need to really evaluate what is going to stick from this transfer portal overhaul that Coach Prime has gotten underway in Boulder, Colorado. Because the people that are pro-Deion and the people that are skeptics of Deion Sanders are yelling from the exact same point. The people that are pro-Deion are saying, well, he brought in a whole new roster. Never mind last year 1-11. Forget about all that. It doesn't matter because he brought in a new roster. The skeptics are saying, yeah, he brought in a whole new roster. That's going to take a minute to mesh. Going to take a second for that to really get working and have that thing firing on all cylinders. But I think it's important to say this. It's fine to be transfer portal heavy, but I think it's also important to understand that anytime a player transfers, there is a reason behind that transfer. For me personally, I jumped in the transfer portal as a graduate transfer. I had one more year to use. I had graduated from my school, and I wanted to go play somewhere else and get a different college experience. Some kids jump in the transfer portal because of, personal reasons with the family. Maybe they have a coaching staff change. Maybe they fit better in a different system. Like, there's a lot of really real reasons to transfer. Now, with that being said, there's also a lot of negative reasons for kids to transfer. Maybe he wasn't a culture fit. Maybe he wasn't going to get playing time at this other school. He wasn't good enough to make the cut. And so for Colorado, I think you probably have a mix of real reasons and reasons that maybe you have to, I don't know, make an excuse for is the right way to say it, but some reasons that maybe would be on the less positive side. So for Colorado, they are throwing a ton at the wall. And make no mistake, what they did with throwing a lot of this at the wall is already better than what they had last season. I don't think Colorado only wins one game in 2023. Spoiler alert. But even with that being said, with what Coach Prime is doing right now, it might take a second for us to figure out exactly what hit rate he has in the transfer portal with over 50 guys coming to his roster. Now, I will say this, though. Going forward for Colorado, the Big 12 and the move for them to that conference is going to boost them from a recruiting standpoint, because no longer do you have to tell kids about what they're going to have to do with the broadcast perspective with the Pac-12. And, hey, that's too bad your mom and dad want to watch you play. They better make sure they have the right streaming package. You want to watch us play? Turn on ESPN, turn on Fox. That's a boost for them. Also, Coach Prime, he's got ties to some of the most talent-rich states. Not far from California, being in Boulder, Colorado. He's got ties to Texas, lived there for a long time, coached there for a long time at the high school level. He's from the state of Florida. Like, he's got his bases covered from that standpoint. But I think with what he walked into at Colorado, there's going to be a settling period. There's going to be a second for this roster to kind of, filter out who's going to stay and who maybe isn't the guy that you want starting for you on Saturdays. Got a lot of pieces, though. Shedeur Sanders, I think, is going to surprise a lot of people. Travis Hunter, undeniably one of the best athletes in college football, was a top recruit coming out of high school. There's no secret with that. But it might take a second for all 22 to get on the same page with this staff and get it corrected. So when I look at Colorado, I think it's fair to say by year 3, then we can accurately assess what Coach Prime is going to be. By year 3, I think you can start to talk about, depending on the track record from year 1 to year 2, okay, now we have a real picture as to what we can compete for at Colorado. At that point, I think it's Coach Prime's team. So for Colorado fans, for those of y'all watching Coach Prime and what he's got going on, give it 3 years, is what we're trying to say. Give it 3 years. Now, Wisconsin and Luke Fickell, very, very unique situation he's walking into. Because a lot of the time, not majority of the time, but a lot of the time, you have a head coach walk into a new job where a coach was fired, and it is just a dumpster fire. Like, you got to tear out the foundation of the house. You got to knock the whole thing down and start over, like what Coach Prime is doing at Colorado. Now, at Wisconsin, that's not the case. This is a team that won a bowl game last year. This is a team that still has some pretty decent talent on the roster, Braylon Allen being one of them, grown man running the football for them. They've got some pieces here. I think the roster and the culture has some solid bones to it. So when you look at what he could do going forward, Wisconsin isn't building in the most brutal conditions in the Big Ten West. It's the Big Ten West, not the AFC West. Okay, they don't play Michigan. They don't play Penn State. Their toughest game is against Ohio State. And when you look at the Big Ten West in the last year of what the Big Ten having divisions, Wisconsin has a very real path to getting to Indianapolis and playing for a Big 12 title, for a Big Ten title. Last year, Purdue won the Big Ten West. Guess what their record was? 8-4. Luke Fickell and company, they have I believe the over-under win total for them in Vegas is somewhere around 8.5, 9 wins. They have a very real chance to get to Indy and to play for a Big Ten title. Now, do they win the Big Ten title? Is their roster at a place where they can beat a team like Michigan or beat a team like Ohio State or heck, Penn State, should they come out of that side of the Big Ten? I don't know. I think it's a little bit too soon to make any definitive statement about that, but I think it does come down to, for them, the efficacy of the new pieces they've added. And I'm not just talking about on the field. They went and added a quarterback. A couple quarterbacks. They went and added who their starting quarterback's going to be in Tanner Mordecai. They went and added 4 new wide receivers via the transfer portal because of what that new game plan is going to be under Phil Longo. They're going to be balanced. Don't get it twisted, but they're going to throw the football a lot more than what we've seen from Wisconsin in the past. Still going to have your neck rolls. Still going to have your tight ends. Still going to have your tough run game, but they're going to try and throw the football around the yard. How well that works in Luke Fickell's first year, I think, determines how far they can go in year one. But I already told you, for Luke Fickell and company, I think the first year that he's there, I think they can very much so compete, at least, maybe not win, but they can compete for a Big Ten title. And there's a lot made about the new Big Ten next year with USC and UCLA joining the party and no more divisions. And absolutely, that's going to, in some way, shape, or form, impact Wisconsin. You would imagine USC is probably near the top tier of the Big Ten. You have USC and probably in the top tier in the Big Ten. I think I just said USC twice. You have USC, Ohio State, Michigan, probably all in that top tier within the Big Ten, probably Penn State as well. But I don't think you see Wisconsin just fall off a cliff with adding USC to the party there. So with that being said, I like where Wisconsin sits. I like where Luke Fickell is, and I think that this could be a year where they really make some noise in the Big Ten. And if they do, that's going to be crucial for what they do on the recruiting trail. If they can keep adding talent with the way this conference is changing, watch out for Wisconsin. Again, I think you can expect competitiveness for the Big Ten title in 2023 in Luke Fickell's first year. Now let's move on to Auburn. Hugh Freeze has proven very, very clearly he's not playing with y'all. Like, look at what he's done on the recruiting trail. He's flipped 2 5-stars, 1 from Bama, 1 from Georgia, and right now is just absolutely swinging away in the transfer portal. Added over 20 guys. And for Auburn, we probably talk about them totally differently if they're in a different conference. Like, how do we talk about Auburn if they're in the Pac-12? Are we talking about them maybe having a chance to win that conference? If they're in the ACC or the Big 12, we're like, where are they in the top tier in those conferences? But the unfortunate reality for the good people in Auburn, Alabama, they're in the SEC. And with what Hugh Freeze inherited from a roster and from a talent perspective, he got a broken boat. There was holes in the bottom of it. The sail was kind of torn up. And so he sees that and says, I need some more tools. I need better talent. Goes to the portal, adds a bunch of players, adds Peyton Thorne to probably be his starting quarterback this coming season, and is trying to put it all together. Now, that'd be one thing if you're doing that and putting the boat out to sea in the ACC or in the Pac-12 or one of those conferences, but you're doing it in the SEC. You're doing the revamp and the rebuild and the fixing of a roster that I'm using as a boat here. You're trying to put together a boat within a monsoon. That is the SEC. Like, that is a very tall task. And even though he infused a ton of talent, the several million-dollar question is, how does that mesh in year one? Same thing we said about Wisconsin. How does that fit together in the first year at Auburn? Because I'm not questioning the talent. I'm not even questioning Peyton Thorne. I'm not questioning all the guys they brought in. But even with how they could hit the ground running at Auburn, there's still the question of depth. Because behind these 20-plus transfers they added, I don't know that you feel enormously confident about the guys behind them. They've got to have some guys really step up here. Now, sometimes adding a new staff to the mix can equip some of those other players to step up and to be able to, be better. But even with that being said, I think for Auburn, it's going to take a second here. I love the direction. I love what they're doing on the recruiting trail. Heck, if they land KJ Bolden going forward in the 2024 cycle, like, what do we say about Auburn in a couple of years here and the direction they have with talent under Hugh Freeze? I love the direction. I don't love 2023 for them to be the year where they just pop up and beat a team like Georgia or beat a team like Alabama and compete in the top tier of the SEC. So for Auburn, I like another cycle for them. Get them another cycle of transfer portal guys. Get some of those recruits in-house. Give Peyton Thorne another year as a starting quarterback. Let it sort of run its course a little bit here. Let's get a little bit more footing at Auburn, and then we can start to talk about what they're going to be in the SEC. So for Auburn, give them at least 2 years is what I would say for Hugh Freeze. Now, Matt Rule potentially could be the most interesting coach in this whole discussion. Really quickly, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you like the video. Everybody tuned in live. We appreciate you. We got triple digits of y'all tuned in live, so thank you for that. Make sure you like the video, and we'll keep on rolling here. So thank you for that. All right. Now, Matt Rule, like I said, fascinating. Because when he was at Temple, when he was at Baylor, both of those situations were down bad. I mean, especially Baylor. There were people that wanted Baylor football to get the death penalty. And he walked into that. Took him 3 years to get him to a Big 12 title appearance. That's typically been his track record. Year 3 is really that big pop year for Matt Rule. Now, 2 things are interesting about Nebraska and about college football right now. One, Nebraska is in a better roster situation than both those schools were when he took them over, both Temple and Baylor. Also, the transfer portal exists in a way it did not when Matt Rule was at Baylor. I understand it existed, but the fluidity and the mobility for players to move schools and to play right away, like that's something that Matt Rule hasn't been able to utilize yet in the college game. So my question for Nebraska and how they revamp under Matt Rule, how long, I'll rephrase that. What is the jumping off point for them is a good gauge for how long it's going to take. Because this year is going to be fascinating with, do they win 6 games, or are they a team that somehow pops and wins 8 games? Do they fall back down and win 5 games? Like, what is the jumping off point for Nebraska? I don't even think the people at Nebraska know. Vegas has got them at 6 wins, but even so, man, there's so much here for Nebraska that is unknown. What is Jeff Sims going to be? What does that new defense look like under Tony White? What does Marcus Satterfield do for them as the OC? I don't have a question about the long term for Nebraska, but I think year 1 is the first page of the story that we have to get down. Now, I would also say this, it's not getting easier as the Big Ten expands. USC and UCLA joining the party, and for Nebraska, previously it was you just got to win the Big Ten West. We talked about it for Wisconsin this coming season. It's an ideal spot to be at when it comes to your path to getting to a Big Ten title appearance. But now, you go from just having to be the best team in the Big Ten West to having to be one of the top 2 teams. And the unfortunate reality for where the Big Ten is right now for Nebraska, or where they're going to be, is you have to be the top 2 in a conference that probably has the top 4 or 5 already spoken for, with Ohio State, USC, Michigan, Wisconsin's probably somewhere in that top 5. Penn State's probably somewhere in that top 5. Like, you see what I'm saying here? That makes the mountain just a little bit more steep. So depending on the jumping off point this coming season, depending on their success in 2023, I could see year 2 being a year where Matt Rule and company kind of get it together, and we see another portal class get in there, and we see his culture really get in there, and Nebraska makes a run at this thing. I would be more conservative. I would say let's give Matt Rule 3 years. That's what his track record has been at different stops. I think that's what it's going to take as the Big Ten sort of reshapes. Let's give Matt Rule some time, and we'll see where Nebraska is after this first year. What's the jumping off point for the Cornhuskers? Even so, man, a lot of big-name head coaches all across the country that are going to take their first hack at it at a new location. So I'm excited to watch that. I'm excited to see what those schools look like at the end of the year. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.